My name's Allison Boyle and I'm one of the facilitators at Quest for Life, and it's a joy to be with you on this Wednesday at home with Quest. This morning we're going to be chatting about happiness, and I thought this was a good follow-up to Margie Bronstein's Quest Connect, the hour-long presentation she did on Sunday, which talked about positivity. So I thought this might be a good follow-up. So I'm really looking forward to diving into some of this territory. We'll talk about what happiness is, different types of happiness, and we'll look at why we pursue happiness. And then we'll look at some practices or a little bit of a strategy for considering that, maybe we're okay just as we are, rather than engaging in kind of futile pursuits to pursue certain types of happiness. So we'll explore all that territory together. Now, unfortunately, Facebook seems to have changed its format a little bit, which means I'm not sure if I can actually see your comments anymore. I don't seem to be able to see them. But if anyone is on board, if you could maybe just post a comment and I'll look down occasionally and see if it magically appears, or a little thumbs up sign or something, that would be great. So while we're waiting on other people to join us, we'll start by coming to our senses, that little practice that we do regularly just to bring us into the present moment, which will be really key to what we're going to be talking about today. Can we actually find pleasure in the present moment? So just get comfortable, no need to change anything. And perhaps just start by taking a couple of longer, slow breaths. Perhaps a little emphasis on the breath out. Even there could be a sigh behind that. Just as we let go of everything that's gone before. And we'll just take our awareness, first of all, to a sense of touch. Touch of your clothing against your skin. What's supporting you? The chair, your feet on the floor. What your hands can touch. Then shift your awareness to any tastes that might be in your mouth or sensations in the mouth. The mouth can be a field of sensations. And smell. Taste and smell work in concert with each other. So what are the aromas that are in the air? Take your awareness to anything you can see, even if your eyes are closed. Light, dark, squiggles, colour. Or if your eyes are open, what's within the field of your gaze? And as you do this little practice, just notice that thoughts will come. That's okay. Just let them pass through the field of your awareness. As you take your awareness to your sense of hearing, sounds that are close by, within your own body, within the room, Then sounds that are perhaps outside of the room. And just let these sounds come to you, not needing to label them, just receive them. And then return to your breath. Just following the breath for a few cycles. And see if you can get in touch with a basic feeling of okayness as you do this practice, that right now in this moment, that probably you have everything that you need. You can also notice that maybe there's some background feelings of not being settled or distraction. That can be there too. But in this moment, just notice that everything's okay. And that basically you have what you need right now. And then when you're ready, bring your awareness back into the room. And notice what you notice. Notice how you feel right now. So I can see that I've been joined by a few people, and that's fantastic. I can see Candice and Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Karen and Connie. Okay, I can see some names up there. That's very reassuring. I'm getting a little warning sign on my screen, which is a little bit alarming. I don't know what it means, and I don't think I can do anything about it, so I'm going to ignore it. That's going to be my strategy. So let's dive into our topic. So what is happiness and why do we pursue it? So happiness has got a few definitions, but for the purpose of today, what if we stick with happiness being an emotional state that's usually characterized by feelings of contentment, joy, satisfaction, maybe fulfillment. And it would seem as though there's two key components to happiness, kind of that balanced sense of an emotional state that everybody experiences a whole range of emotion. We talk about that at Quest, that, all feelings are welcome, and we use the metaphor of a mansion to consider that, there can be room in the mansion for all feelings. All feelings are welcome. So we all experience a range of emotion. And happiness is generally linked or associated to those feelings that we kind of like a bit more, sometimes called positive feelings. People who are happy tend to, on the whole, experience more pleasurable feelings. But it doesn't mean that they don't still experience boredom, frustration, anger, loneliness, and of course, sadness from time to time. But when faced with that kind of discomfort, they kind of have an underlying sense of optimism, and that, no feeling is final, even if this particular feeling is uncomfortable or unpleasant at the moment. The other component is about life satisfaction. And maybe this is easier for us to tap into, how satisfied do you feel with different areas of your life, including your relationships, work, achievements, and other things that are important to you or that are of interest to you. So happiness is not just one thing. In fact, Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, talked about a distinction between two different types of happiness. He talked about hedonia, that sense of happiness that's derived from pleasure, what feels good. Self-care, fulfilling your desires, experiencing enjoyment and satisfaction. So pause for a moment and think about some of the elements that you experience hedonic, pleasure or hedonic happiness. What makes you feel good? What fulfills your desires? What gives you satisfaction? And it doesn't have to be big things, right? I feel intensely satisfied most mornings when I have that first cup of coffee. That brings me a lot of joy. It doesn't need to be a big thing. Okay, but see if you can get that sense for yourself. I think most of us find that one a bit easier than perhaps the next one that Aristotle spoke about, which is eudaimonic happiness. And that's the happiness derived from seeking virtue and having meaning. So it includes, virtue, meaning in life, and a sense of purpose. Now, that could be associated with fulfilling responsibilities, investing in long term goals, having concern for the welfare of others, living up to personal ideals, for example. Sometimes I think we might find that a little bit harder to kind of get in touch with. And at Quest, we refer to this or talk about this aspect when we talk about a sense of challenge, having our life challenged in a positive way, stepping up to new challenges, and also making meaning of the challenges that we may currently face. I mean, most people don't come to Quest when things are going really well. So, in faced with the current, crisis or the current challenge, we don't necessarily make meaning when we're going through that. But on reflection, a lot of people tell us that, of course, I wouldn't have wanted that diagnosis or that illness, but I wouldn't give up the learning that's taken place, or I wouldn't want to go through that life event again. My God, no, I wouldn't. But I learned so much from it. I learned so much about myself, about the world, blah, blah, blah. So hedonic and eudaimonic pleasure, happiness, is known today in the world of psychology as pleasure and meaning, respectively. And so why do we pursue happiness? That's the next thing we're going to look at. And I'm going to turn to the work here of Rick Hanson, American neuropsychologist. And I've got this little, I'll put a link to this later, but I've got this really good little book. I mean, look at it. It's, it's readable in a day, really, called Just One Thing. And I've got a lot of my little pearls of wisdom from this book. And so in there, Rick Hanson suggests that there's probably 4 reasons that we pursue happiness. And I've got some notes here because I don't want to just rely on my memory around this. And he says that the first reason is one that relates to survival. And that is we pursue happiness because the brain was evolved to meet 3 needs: to avoid harm, to approach rewards, and to attach to others. Our nervous system was designed to achieve just that in order that we survive, so that we can pass on our genes from an evolutionary perspective. The second thing he talks about is that, our consumer-driven Western culture often suggests to us in many different ways and markets to us that basically we're not enough. And we get thousands of messages a day telling us that we need more stuff, that we need to be wealthier, or it can be fear-inducing that we don't have enough money, wealth, that we need to have a different appearance because our appearance isn't acceptable, and that we need to accomplish more. So we can have that sense of striving, maybe unhealthy striving, that drivenness, out of fear, really, to achieve that. Again, we talk about this at Quest when we talk about commitment to living, that often up until each of us face maybe a personal crisis, that our commitment to living has been all about getting more stuff and setting up, our house, or accumulating wealth, or going on the next holiday, or having the latest pair of shoes, or whatever it is. And then when we face a crisis, we realize that actually just having more stuff really isn't going to cut it in this circumstance, and that our priorities, our commitment to ourselves and our priorities that are associated with that perhaps might need to be prioritizing, our body, keeping our minds in good company, prioritizing our emotions, getting emotionally up to date, and nurturing or feeding, our spirit, whatever that means to each of us as an individual. The third thing that Rick Hansen talks about is past negative experiences, especially the young experiences we have when we're wee, that can often lead or leave old wounds. And these old wounds can form beliefs that, again, I'm not that smart, I'm not that attractive, worthy, and therefore I need to do more and more in order to be accepted, to be loved, just to fit in, that, I'm not just enough as I am. That's often our very young brain making sense of what's happening round about us and some of the messages that we were given. And some of those messages might have been very well intended, but we had little tiny brains trying to make sense of that. So these negatively biased beliefs can become the kind of default setting of the brain. Hence, there's often this background sense of anxiety, of hurt, of feelings of inadequacy, guilt, shame, just that sense of not enoughness. And often when a situation comes up in the present that triggers those more vulnerable parts of ourselves, then we find that often we may overreact because our buttons have been pressed, that something in the present has come close to those old wounds, our Achilles heel, if you like. We talk about that at Quest in terms of the volcano of emotion. The fourth thing that Rick Hansen talks about is that the brain's constantly trying to impose order on chaos, just for us to have a sense of, a more stable experience of sound, taste, thoughts. And naturally, we want to hold on to those experiences that we like, that are pleasurable. But since neuroprocessing continually changes, all our experiences are fleeting. Think of the weather, especially, the current sort of climate. One minute, you can be sitting out in the sun and you can be really enjoying that sun in your face. You really want it to last. But then a cold current comes through and it spoils the whole thing, So to hold on to or not expect things to change is just not the way that kind of nature works and can lead to a lot of suffering. Rick Hansen comments, I'm going to read this, that, all experiences are fleeting. They slip through your fingers as you reach for them. An unreliable basis for deep and lasting happiness, yet so close, so tantalizing, and so we keep reaching. I would say that sums up my relationship with chocolate quite nicely, that it's really tantalizing. You want more of it, and you have more of it, and then you start to feel a bit sick. Or is that just me? So for all these reasons, deep down there can be a sense of disturbance, not enoughness, and unease. Test this out right now. Try to feel try to feel not uneasy for more than a couple of seconds. As you sit there, try and feel not one bit uneasy, discontented or disconnected for more than a few seconds, let alone a few minutes. It's really hard for all those reasons. And hence, we practice. So, conventional strategies for happiness, getting more stuff and constantly, linking into the default network about not being good enough is both doomed. And, it's easy to see how it can make us unhappy, actually, and that it's pretty futile and pointless to stress and strain over fleeting experiences like the weather. At Quest, we talk about finding peace, actually, more than we talk about happiness. And being in our first nature, that inherently good, pure, lovable nature that we were born with before we took on these beliefs and before all this programming kicked in. And touching into that experience regularly, that basically we're enough already. And when the truth of that experience kind of sinks in, and that can be fleeting too, it can be hard to keep that front and center. But when that does kick in, even just for a few moments at a time, that we already have access to feeling peaceful, happy, and loved and lovable, there's no need to engage in the unhappy strategies to gain happiness. And we often have more to offer others, actually, in that circumstance. So before I go on to a little bit more about the how, I'm just going to check if there's any comments that people want to make about that, or be nice to hear how you're traveling with this information, and if it's resonating for you in some way. So feel free to post. We'll have a look at them. So how can we engage with this? Well, even just bringing awareness to that fact that the conventional strategy for happiness is pointless, even that can be, it can be disappointing, but it can be helpful, actually. In terms of our core needs to avoid harm and approach rewards and attach to others, observe that basically most of us, most of the time, right here, right now, actually have everything that we need. That for most of us, most of the time, there's no immediate threat. I know there's disasters happening in the world. I know people are living in, awful situations. But if we can just bring it down to this next moment, do you have everything that you need, basically, right now? That in this moment, everything's basically okay. That there's no immediate threat, that we're breathing, that we can connect to each other even through this medium, that I'm basically okay right now. This is not about ignoring realistic threats. It's just a recognition of a basic reality, if that's the case right now. Imagine doing that many times throughout the day. It can be really calming to touch into that reality, which can bring peace of mind if practiced. In terms of needing more stuff, consider what really matters to you. If you were told that you only had 1 year to live, what would be really important? Most people at Quest, some of whom have a life-threatening condition or diagnosis, tell us that what matters most is connection. It's relationships. It's not about stuff. And maybe it's about engaging more with nature or your spirit and being connected to that. In terms of the early programming and the beliefs that we all run around with about not being good enough, look inside to see the facts of your natural goodness, that first nature that you were born with, that purity and that love. Just those inherent facts. And then, what are your realistic strengths? And I'm talking about strengths, not something that you're exceptionally good at, but what are some of the personal qualities that you have? It's just a fact. Doesn't mean that you're better at that than someone else. It's not a comparison. But what are your inherent good qualities? None of this means not engaging with healthy striving or or trying to improve, but it does mean healthy striving and improvement by realistic reflection on behavior and performance rather than just beating ourselves up and being self-critical and letting that default negative self-talk about not being good enough kick in and dominate. It might still be there, but does it have to dominate? So there's a big difference between, improving that comes from reflection than trying to use criticism, which isn't very effective, in order to improve. And it's normal to wish for more pleasure. In fact, it's healthy because it makes us go towards it. And it's healthy to want less pain, of course, and to create a life with meaning and purpose. So as mentioned before, for survival purposes, the brain is good at learning from bad, but bad at learning from the good. So Rick Hanson talks about taking in the good by enriching an experience, by making it last a bit longer, just 10, 20, sometimes 30 seconds longer. Let's do it now. So just get a sense of something pleasurable or fulfilling, satisfying, that's happened to you already this morning, or where you've experienced a sense of contentment. It doesn't have to be something big. Before I came on here this morning, I vacuumed and I cleaned my floors. Now, I didn't particularly enjoy doing that, I have to say, but I did feel very deeply satisfied at the end of it, right? It doesn't have to be big. So get a sense of something already this morning. The sun on your face, breakfast, cup of coffee, chat with a friend, whatever. And really let that feeling that's associated with that experience really sink in. Fill your body and your mind with that experience and the feeling that comes from it. See if you can intensify it just for 10, 20 seconds. Kind of marinate yourself in that experience. Now just imagine if you did that several times a day with different things that happen during the day, because our brains are really, really good at picking up the bad things that happen during the day. But a lot of the good stuff, or even neutral stuff, just slips through. It's like slipping through a sieve or something. So what about if we set an intention to look for these small but pleasurable, satisfying, meaningful things that do happen during the day, the small things, and then practice staying with them 10, 20 seconds longer, really being with them and marinating them a little bit longer. And doing that once or twice isn't probably going to make any difference in the long term, but doing that as a consistent practice, gradually, we're actually kind of weaving in a fundamental sense of being peaceful, happy, right into the structure of our brain. And maybe think and reflect about, what difference could that make in your life? This is powerful stuff. So that's all I've really got to talk about this morning as we wind up. I'm just going to check the comments. And hi, Andy from New Zealand. And I'm so glad that Candice is with me about the chocolate. So Candice, my recent practice, although I didn't manage it yesterday, but my practice now is I've got a whole bunch of oranges in the fridge. And when I ever get the desire to have chocolate, which I've eradicated from the house, I'm having an orange instead. And I'm surprisingly finding that quite satisfying, more satisfying than I thought. Although yesterday I did dive back into the chocolate when I was out, but today's a new day. So we have a new opportunity. So it's been lovely talking with you and lovely spending some time with you. Thank you very much for joining me. And just a reminder to check out the Quest for Life website, where you'll have access to lots of juicy bits of information and resources, including all these video recordings that we do currently once a week. They're all there. You can watch them anytime. Once a month, we do Quest Connect on a Sunday from 2 till 3. And so there's a whole heap of resources there, as well as information about both online and face-to-face programs that we conduct at Quest for Life. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope the rest of your day provides the opportunity for you to have some peace, some joy, some contentment, some fulfilling experiences. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.